Dr. Vijay Kumar, retired.
రామారావు గారిని వేదికకి రావాల్సిందిగా కోరుతున్నాం.
This particular meeting was thought over, and we were also trying to give it a little publicity through the Twitter and Facebook. One of the strong requests that was Arambhincharu Nicha Manavulu Vignayasa Santrasthulai Arambhinchi Parityajinchadaru Vignayasthulai Machamul Thirul Vikna Nihas anything about special status or something or 35A or 370 and the instrument cyclostyle paper. So that and then this is supposed to be transitory and temporary and this 370. So these are historical facts I think which we should keep in mind whenever we talk or discuss about these issues. Now I request Lieutenant General Muhammad Ahmed Jaki Garu to give his valuable message with the option of sitting and talking from there or come to the dais, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Gentlemen, I happened to be the corps commander when the balloon went up, and this was in October of the year when Rubia Saeed was kidnapped. At that point of time, we had no intelligence as to what was going on, and I, as a corps commander, was groping in the dark. My troops were very few. I had only 19 infantry division manning the line of control, and the other two divisions were up in Ladakh, 3 division and 28 division. The paucity of troops, and yet the troops were magnificent in the job they were handling. We must pay tribute to those brave officers and men who stood on the LC and also guarded their line of control, and besides line of communications. We had to be looked after, otherwise we would have had many casualties on the roads. It is the duty of the young soldiers and officers to ensure that morale was always on top of the world. They were never deterred by anything, and you will be happy to note, in the 2 years of my command, I lost only 4 men by fire, and yet we had better of them in every encounter when we had. This shows the training and leadership of the army. I am proud of that. On this day when Rubia Saeed was kidnapped, in the morning at 11, I was rung up by the Commissioner of Srinagar, Mr. Pandit, at 6 in the evening. I told him to come straight away, but he had to discuss things with the Darbar Move officers, the Chief Secretary who was in Jammu. It took him 2.5 hours to come and tell me that Rubia Saeed was kidnapped at 11. So I said, there is no point now, you are telling me, and she will not be here in Srinagar. She would have been taken away. Along with him was additional DGCID, of J&K, Mr. Anil Kapoor. I told them that Army will give you all the assistance, but it is your duty to know which area is vulnerable, where she could have gone, and where the trouble is. However, whatever troops I had, we gave them in aid to civil authority, and we had the curfew. What I told them was, curfew has to be imposed, and that anybody trying to stir out has to be shot. There is no mercy to be shown to anybody who is a defaulter. And luckily, nothing of that sort happened. However, the troubles then continued, and every day there was a problem that one bridge or the other was being broken, firing was taking place, and people were killed. This was done by those who were inducted from across the border of Pakistan. My troops at that point of time were ensuring that line of control they don't cross. But the terrain is such, the number of rivulets across the Pir Panjal and Shamsabari range was such that it was a porous line of control because of paucity of troops. However, since I had commanded 19 Infantry Division at Baramulla and I had walked Shamsabari range and Pir Panjal and every post, walked up to it, but flew back after that because I wanted to know what is the terrain like and where the enemy can have an ingress. That assisted me a great deal. I had very good sub-area commander, initially Brigadier M.M. Lakhera, later on Lieutenant General and later Governor. Thereafter I had Nasib Katoch, a very brave, upright officer. I must say that I was assisted by the paramilitary forces also. I had from CRP Ashok Patel, and I had a very good IPS officer, DG, that was J.N. Saxena. In January, General Krishna Rao, who was the governor, resigned, and Sri Jagmohan was placed as the governor. The day he arrived, there was a problem, because in the city, on the 19th or 20th of January night, there was a problem of lot of people coming out. There was no curfew at that time, and ensuring firing at some places. When Sri Jagmohan came, I went and met him. He told me that he had the report that there were 200 people were marching towards the Raj Bhavan. So I straight away went. I didn't have a talk with him, and I straight away left, went to and picked up J.N. Saxena. Went over to Lal Chowk, thereafter the Gaukar Dal Bridge. I had reports at that time that the civilians had tried to snatch weapons from my troops, and my troops in the self-defense opened fire at two places. Gaukar Dal, 6 were downed, and at Sher Kamshir Institute there were about 3. Now the problem was very serious. When I went to Gaukar Dal Bridge, near the mosque, they were trying to break out, and this was the curfew time. I told them that should anybody come out, he'll be shot. However, 3 men can come out and meet me and DG Police J.N. Saxena. 3 men came out and talked to me and said they want curfew to be lifted. I said it won't be lifted. Number two, we want to go and bury our, I said, troops will help you. You will not go. Third, I said to them, that any of the boys and girls who are from different parts of Srinagar Valley, they will be sent by the army in their, by escort. And I told them to please ensure that anybody doesn't come out. And then I went back and reported to Shri Jagmohan that everything was under control. That was the first time we met. I must say, he was a
I had in my batch, I belong to the 79 batch of the IAS, two officers, one Mr. Arun Kumar, another is Sonali Saran, and they fell in love when they were in the academy and both decided to marry. And when the cadre allocation finally happened, I mean, it couldn't have been worse. He was allotted J&K and she was allotted Kerala. No, it's fact. There's no, I'm not making up any story here. Then they had a choice. Choice of either both of them going over to J&K or both of them going over to Kerala. They chose to go to J&K. And Sheikh Abdullah was very, very supportive of both of them. He wrote to Government of India in favor of them. Both of them did their 35 years of service there. But at the end today, they are disappointed. There's no doubt about that. And both of them have written 2-3 books. If somebody has a time, just have a look at that. She wrote a book, Outsider's Curse. Sonali Kumar's book is Outsider's Curse. She says, we have been here for 35 years and I can't get an admission for my son in any of the institutions. And I can't buy a piece of land even in case I want to be genuinely part of the Kashmir. What is this? That's the theme on which she wrote. But Mr. Arun Kumar wrote Kashmir is free and Kashmir thinks free, two books, where an imaginary novel type of a situation has created and recreated the whole position. In that one point which he told me also, I mean, which just now M.A. Krishna Rao was also mentioning, this whole artificial atmosphere of being different has created vested interest within itself. And that nexus between the political leadership, bureaucratic apparatus and the terrorists, something I think which really was the problem as far as Kashmir is concerned. Now I request distinguished guest and former Home Secretary Sri Padmanabh Garu, who is, as equally conversant with the issue as Mr. Ram Madhav Garu, to share his thoughts with all of us. Thank you.
Sri Krishna Rao Garu and distinguished panelists on the dais, and the Home Minister and the Deputy Home Minister, the Minister of State, had their own differences about Kashmir. One would say something, the other would oppose it. So that is how it was going on, you know. So then the Prime Minister, Mr. Narasimha Rao Garu, he decided that we should have a separate Department of Jammu and Kashmir Affairs, and then it would be directly under me, means under the Prime Minister. And he said, but you would also be the Secretary for Jammu Kashmir Affairs. So there was a separate Department of Jammu Kashmir Affairs, and I was the Secretary there for about 3.5 years. So this is my association with that. 94-97 was at the peak of insurgency. 94-95 was the peak of insurgency. And so our immediate job was to see that the insurgency is sort of brought down to the extent possible. And Lieutenant General Zaki was there as the advisor at that time. So we worked together. And so that is my introduction. Now, coming to the topic, I would like to make 3 points. One is this abolition of 370. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it necessary? And all that. I would be very, very brief on that. The second is, yes, we have done it. And the point is, where are the dangers that are lurking? What are the possible dangers? And 3, what should we do? now to counter them. These are the 3 points I want to touch. The first one, I think this decision was taken at the right time and the boldest decision I have known in my entire administrative career. And it was absolutely necessary at that point of time. I will tell you why. Even though I was there for 3.5 years, but I continued my association with Kashmir. I have been going there quite often and following whatever is happening. The story is, whenever I think of Kashmir, it is like a train to nowhere. You have taken the train would go sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes back, sometimes front, sometimes halting. That's all. It was not going anywhere. There was no destination. So that is what was happening in Kashmir. It was a tamasha. For people who were there, it was a tamasha because they say what were the solutions that were offered. You talk to the people. Which people? All the people, elected people are there in the assembly. So you talk to the assembly people, so there is no problem. But no, you talk to Hurriyat. Who are these Hurriyat fellows? There are about 6-7 people. Each one has got his influence in a set of 3-4 villages, nothing beyond that. Not even one constituency. But they are the great leaders of the movement, so you have to talk to them. Or you talk to the terrorists, the militants. Most of them are inspired by Pakistan. Or inside, you have to talk to these people. So what would you talk? And these Hurriyat chaps are on the pay of Pakistan. I am directly telling you from the ISI. Where would they take the money? They would come to Delhi at the time of Pakistan's Independence Day, go to the Pakistan embassy and carry the bags back. Everybody knew it. But then nothing could be done. And then they were also carrying the bags from Indian side also. The India also was paying them. So they were getting the money from Pakistan side, they were getting money from the Indian side also. And they are put there by Pakistan. So what would you talk? They have been saying Azadi, Azadi, and then all those things, So the train was not going anywhere. The second solution, what the government's thought till then is, we must talk to Pakistan. What do you talk to Pakistan? Would you tell them that you vacate the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and give it back to us? They would not do that. Would you tell them, don't attack us? I mean, don't keep on sending these things. You withdraw your terrorist fellows whom you are sending. His policy of 1,000 cuts. India should bleed, not cut the throat, but you strike them at 1,000 places so that it would bleed to death. That was their policy. So would they stop it by talking to them? So there is no question of talks. That's why the talks are started. Something happens, you stop it. Again, somebody says, no, we must talk at the secretary level, at the foreign minister level, at the prime minister level. This is a tamasha. It was just going on. We were not going anywhere. And second thing, this 370 article, what it has done is, I'm not going into history, it has bred a sense of separatism. It has increased the sense of separatism totally in the people. And everyone, the leaders there began behaving as if it is their samsthan, at their own place, And in the 71 years of Kashmir's history, there are only about 7 families which have ruled that. Sheikh Abdullah, Farooq Abdullah and Omar Abdullah ruled for 30 years. 30. Then Bakshi Ghulam Muhammad ruled for 10 years. Then their own relations, Gul Shah and somebody else, ruled for a few more years. Congress, PDP, Mufti and his daughter for 6 years. Congress for about 8 years. And then presidents ruled for about 8 years. I have accounted for 69 years. So only these people, they ruled it as if it is their fiefdom, kingdom, And not the people, the politicians, the people in power, And so, the Jammu and Kashmir is not a poor state. In fact, there is no begging anywhere there. If you calculate this one, per capita income, it comes quite high, around 70,000 rupees a year. But that is only a calculation, because you take the gross domestic product of the state, divide by the population, so you say per capita it is about 70,000 rupees, 69,000 rupees. But it doesn't go to them, it goes into the pockets of most of these fellows, the rulers and the Hurriyat and, these type of leaders. So, then, in this type of this one, it would go on for 50 years, 100 years, 150 years, nothing would happen. So, nobody in the government also taken Kashmir seriously, because what is the solution? There is no solution. So, I think the step taken is extremely relevant. And I would also tell you then, Jamaat-e-Islami, there is a body there. And most of the teachers there have gone from UP, our own, this one. And they spread such poison in the schools and all that, the separatist, this one. So completely, right from the beginning, the children have been fed into that particular one. Then, on any pretext, they would go on strike. They would completely bring it to a halt. And it's not only the politicians, as somebody made a mention about the bureaucrats. I would tell you two instances of bureaucrats. One of the chief secretaries, one I can name, Mr. Tayyabji, what he did was, when Amarnath Yatra was going on, there was a terrorist threat. They said, no, we would not allow it to happen in one particular year, 95, I think. He came and I was directly responsible for Kashmir because it was in the president's rule. So it's directly Delhi was dealing with that. He came and said, sir, we should cancel the Amarnath Yatra. We cannot hold it because of this threat. I said, are you mad? I said, Amarnath Yatra, people come from Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Bengal, Maharashtra. What message are you going to give them by saying that this trip should be cancelled? Then he said, I am not responsible if something happens, so you handle it. This is the type of answers they gave. There was another chief secretary, they look like stories, who wrote to the United Nations organization complaining against the government of India about violation of human rights.
Because they can't be trusted with nuclear weapons. So that's a very, very irresponsible statement for a head of a state to make from a United Nations. Then what are your own history and your own record in terms of any of these things? In fact, I'm a little keen follower of what's happening in Pakistan, so I can say one or two issues. In Sindh area. Sindh, I think, what I find is the most secular element in Pakistan is in Sindh. Sindh, when a temple was attacked by some of these people talking of blasphemy, the village Muslims sat all through in the temple and protected it. There seems to be one fellow called Mini Muttu, who is doing all this, and that fellow has not so far been apprehended. And I see on the Twitter most of the Sindhi Muslims saying, why is this fellow Mini Muttu not has been apprehended, though he is behind all this rampaging of temples and assaulting the Hindus? From a 23% minority, all minorities have gone down to 3%. That itself is a testimony of what is happening in this country. The way the Baluchis, the Sindhis are talking about the establishment there, I think that's something, since he has thought it fit to address the sections within the country and try to instigate them, it's time we also show him his place with reference to what's happening back in Pakistan and what happened in Pakistan occupied Kashmir. You have changed its ethnic composition by bringing in all other people from all other areas and settling them there, and you talk of something when it happens in Indian side. So they have too many chinks in their armor, and will have to very, very successfully exploit that and follow the China model of being powerfully insensitive. But unless you are powerful, world will never recognize you or respect you. That's one important lesson. Now I leave the floor to Ramnath Hoga to share his thoughts on Kashmir.
Sri NVSS Prabhakar Garu asked me to join him in organizing this meeting. So he told my batchmate Chandravasan is also his actively participating in it. Then I agreed, and we extended invitation to all of you in less than a week. Maybe I think 3-4 days back only we told all of you. In spite of the short notice and invitation, you all came and made this meeting a grand success. I thank all retired All India Service Officers and other allied people of this city for having accepted our invitation and joined and make this meeting a very grand success. I thank electronic and print media also for coming and covering this meeting. I request all the invitees to join us for dinner in the next hall. Yeah, I request all of you to stand up and participate.
జ్ఞానితులు కావున. So a decision like this to be taken needs a lot of guts, and you nearly have to be sthita prajna, because it's not a ordinary decision to be taken. When people say there are problems that are that has just like that come, it's bound to be there. But the whole issue of being a leader is how do you tackle it? How do you take forward? So that's the most important thing that the government has to look at. We can't have a nation within a nation. This whole thing about 370 and 35A is it has created a nation within a nation. And it's not something that any nation can be comfortable with. Yes, identities are there. I mean, this is a land of diversity. I mean, the way the India has grown, it's not a country of uniformity, it's a country of diversity. And that diversity is not something unique only to Kashmir. That diversity is a diversity of Tamil, it's a diversity of Telugu, it's a diversity of Kannada. Even within Telugu now we have two diversities. How do we handle these diversities and get a unity within that? Unity in diversity is something on which all of us will have to think over. I mean, that should include Kashmir as well. The identity of the Kashmir has to be preserved, protected, and as part of a mainstream India taken forward too. That's what we all want. We are not here, neither the agenda nor our idea is to take away the identity of the Kashmirs. Let that be very, very clear. And that's where I think we'll have to reassure the people that their identity is never in stake. There's no 35A in Chennai. There's no 35A in Hyderabad. There's no 35A in Bangalore. But the identity of Telangana has not changed. The identity of Chennai or the Tamils has not changed, nor that of the Kannadigas. So this whole type of a paranoid that's being created because of this, they will be swamped, their identity will be gone, is something which is wrong and needs to be properly countered. And then, what does the great Prime Minister of Pakistan talk in the United Nations? He's trying to instigate the Indian Muslims. Is that what you do when you go to an international forum? You told that we are a separate nation by religion and took away part of India. That's it. And the Indian Muslims have not gone with you for very good reasons. And they are as national, as committed to the country as anyone else sees. And to try to instigate people from an international forum and then try to pretend and project this as something that he has done something great, I think is very, very unfortunate, and people are seeing through these games. We have an eminent panel here, people who have really worked at the field. Padmanabh Garu was Secretary J&K as well as Home Secretary and has handled the whole issue in person. Mr. Jaggi was in the army fighting it out. And Mr. M.V. Krishna Rao was right on the field as the CRPF DG, field level operations. Of course, Ramana Madhav Garu is fully immersed in the issue. So I won't take much of your time. And my request is to all the guests, they have immense knowledge. the funds of knowledge on the issue. Keep a time limit of about 5 to 6 minutes and tell your experiences and what should be the way forward, leaving greater time to the chief guest to share his thoughts with us. I now start with Sri M.V. Krishna Rao Garu, the former CRPF DGP, to initiate the discussion today evening. Thank you.
రాష్ట్రంలో గడిపాను. సుమారు 1,00,000 మంది CRPF men were under me. This was during the period 2006 October to December 2008. The worst was over by then. ఇప్పటికీ about 40,000 people have been killed in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, largely in the valley of Kashmir. Most of them were killed by the Pakistani-inspired 3 terrorist organizations, Hizbul Mujahideen, Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. There were some collateral damages also. I urge you to go back to the India that existed in 1989 to 92-93. In 1989, after the elections, we had a particularly weak government in the center, led by Sri V.P. Singh. His tenure was plagued by the Mandal agitations, anti-Mandal agitations, pro-Mandal agitations, and simultaneously the ISI of Pakistan managed to get the Hizbul Mujahideen and the others perpetrate violence to such an extent that all the Pandits of the Kashmir Valley were driven out. Their women were raped, their properties were occupied, and some of them were killed, but they were driven away, mostly to Jammu and other places. Unfortunately, the response of the Indian Union, the Union government, was not adequate. We allowed it to happen. Maybe we were inadequate preparations wise. Why did that happen? It happened because right from 1971, when Pakistan adopted the theory called Qurban Ali theory, that is, to make India bleed through 1,000 cuts. It's an avowed foreign policy of Pakistan towards India. This was adopted as a state policy by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, who felt utter humiliation of having lost half the country, East Pakistan, to India, thus becoming Bangladesh, and he had to beg for the release of 84,000 prisoners of war, Pakistani soldiers in Indian prisons. But they could not succeed till 87. In 1987, there was a rigged election in which Syed Yusuf Shah contested against the son-in-law of Sheikh Abdullah. His name is Ghulam Muhyiddin Shah. GM Shah was chief minister for a short while. He somehow was declared elected in spite of the fact that Syed Yusuf Shah got a huge majority. Aggrieved by this, he migrated to Muzaffarabad, the capital of POK, and fell into the hands of ISI, who financed him heavily, and he started the most violent of the 3 terrorist organizations, Hizbul Mujahideen. He is still alive. He changed his name to Syed Salahuddin, and he is the most successful in recruiting the Kashmiris into the jihadi terrorist fold. Another misfortune was in 1989, we had a Union Home Minister, Mufti Muhammad Saeed, who, it is rumored, got his daughter Rubaya Saeed kidnapped, and in order to secure her release, released all the terrorists. This was in 89. languishing in the jails of Jammu as well as Kashmir, and thus gave a lot of indirect help to the terrorist activities in Jammu and Kashmir. Had these two events not happened, if only the government of India was a little stronger, we would not be in the very sad state of affairs now. So, what is the way out? We have been trying our best for the last 70 years, right from 1947, when Maharaja Hari Singh acceded to India on the 26th of October.
Speak Kashmiri, plus other languages. But the official language in Jammu and Kashmir is Urdu. I think the Kashmiri is written in Devanagari. It is also written in Arabic, Persian Arabic. I think you should look at this. What should be the language? Should it be?
Yes, and I'm sure we are in for an enlightening speech. Thank you.
Can I just add one comment? Yeah, sure. Before, sir, I just wanted to add.
Shri Padmanabhai Garu, Shri Chandravadan ji, Yoganand ji, M.V. Krishna Rao Garu, Hanuman Chaudhary Garu, A.K. Khan Garu, and many other distinguished and eminent persons present in this hall, and dear friends. డెబ్భై 72 సంవత్సరాలుగా వేధిస్తున్న ఒక క్యాన్సర్ని 72 గంటల్లో సమాప్తం చేశాం. Many of us have written about it, spoken about it, passed resolutions about it. But honestly speaking, we also never imagined that a day would come when you would actually see the end of this article. So in fact, when this whole thing happened so swiftly, some of our own party members started asking this question, sir, if it was so easy, why did it take 70 years? I used to tell them, friends, look, it did not take 70 years. It took one Narendra Modi. You needed a leadership with determination, courage, and courage of conviction. కృష్ణారావు గారు భర్తృహరిని మెన్షన్ చేశారు కాబట్టి భర్తృహరి సుభాష్తో ఉన్నది నిందంతు నీతి నిపుణా యది వాస్తువంతు. నీతి నిపుణా యూ విల్ ఫైండ్ at 9 o'clock in TV studios, about which also he was referring to. They may criticize you. Or Padmanabhai garu is worried about Labour Party in London and somebody in America. They will do that. And that Bhartrihari Subhashitam ends with that line, Nyayat patham pravichalanti padam na dhiraha. The bold men, the courageous men, the determined men shall never leave the path of justice. We have done justice to the people of Jammu and Kashmir by removing Article 370. And if anybody has any illusion, not necessarily in this room, anywhere in the world, make no mistake, it's not going to come back. That is why I'm saying it is not going to come back. Let me explain to you why I said that sentence. Because you are only thinking about the country, you are thinking about Pakistan, you are thinking about London, you are thinking about America. You are not thinking about people of Kashmir. We have done it for people of Kashmir, remember. One or two criticisms let me first address in the beginning itself. It was said that we have done it without consulting the people. No, one of the great criticisms at 9 o'clock in the TV studios was, you have not consulted the people. Bhai, we have been consulting people for last 70 years. Look at BJP's resolutions. Look at the speeches of BJP leader, the first martyr to sacrifice his life for the unity of a divided India was Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee in 1953. Since 1953, we have been saying whenever the opportunity comes, we are going to remove it. So we have always said that we are going to do it. And when we did it in the most democratic, constitutional manner. But may I ask the Vardis who are raising this question, the very, very important question as to when this Article 370, which was in the draft constitution, it was Article 306A. When it was introduced into the constitution, who was consulted? Sir, do you know? Nobody was consulted. Whoever was consulted had said, no, he should not be there. Whoever was consulted had said, no, such an article should not find place in Indian constitution. Ambedkar was approached by Sheikh Abdullah upon the advice of Nehru to draft the Article 370. Ambedkar said, I shall not commit that sin. Ambedkar ने कहा कि मैं नहीं करूंगा. It is not possible to have such a discriminatory article in our constitution. I shall not permit it. This was Ambedkar. Yet this article became a reality. The draft was prepared by Gopalaswamy Iyengar and placed before Congress Working Committee before it was to be presented to the Constituent Assembly. Gopalaswamy Iyengar, when he presented it to Congress Working Committee with near unanimity rejected it. Why I am saying near unanimity was only two people were in its favor. One was Iyengar himself because he was the mover, although he was not fully in favor of it. But then he was asked to move it, so he moved it. Because he moved it, he supported it. The other person who was in favor of it was Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. Rest of the Congress Working Committee members rejected it. So the matter went up to Nehru. Nehru was in America. Nehru telephones to Patel, requests Patel or probably asks Patel that he should chip in and do something about it. Then Patel reconvenes the Congress Working Committee meeting. Patel tells the Congress Working Committee members, look, like you all, I am also opposed to it. But the prestige and honor of our Prime Minister is involved. Prime Minister gave a word to Sheikh Abdullah that he would give him a special provision. Now may I ask, is this democracy? Because Nehru gave a word to Sheikh Abdullah, this article became a reality. Not because it was supported by Congress Working Committee, not because it was supported even by Constituent Assembly. Constituent Assembly, many members stood up and objected to this article. I mean, the most important person I must quote is Hazrat Mohani. He was a CPI member, Communist Party of India member, not BJP, not Congress, CPI. He stood up and said, how can you give such a special treatment to one state? As Krishna Rauji rightly pointed out, the accession of all the 535 princely states into Indian Union was based on the same document. They all became a part of the dominion of India. When they all became a part of dominion of India, how can you deal with one princely state as separate and give a special status? In fact, Hazrat Mohani says, if you want to give it to Kashmir, why not give it to Baroda also? Why not give it to other princely states? Iyengar gave a big elaborate reply, you know, there is a special situation, etc., etc. Why I am saying this is for two reasons. Number one, it came in in a most undemocratic manner. There were no representatives from Jammu and Ladakh when this issue was taken up. There were only 4 representatives from Jammu and Kashmir. All the 4 were nominated by Sheikh Abdullah, and one of them was Sheikh Abdullah himself. He nominated himself as a member and 3 others of his party. Now, those who tell us that we have not asked the people opinion, etc., first of all, should read their own history. Problem with Indian politics, like mostly Indian intelligentsia also these days, is that we have become knowledge proof. You know about watches which are waterproof. We politicians are knowledge proof. Same Congress party leaders giving lectures in the Lok Sabha. How it was a Salman commitment. Whose commitment? Nobody actually wanted it in the first place. An article which has been inserted into our constitution in a most undemocratic manner has been removed in a most democratic manner. But remember, we have done it not just to please you all, because you all think that, because of Article 370, all the problems are there in Jammu and Kashmir, which is a fact. But when it comes to dealing with these problems, with or without 370, we would have dealt with those problems. We are all concerned about terrorism. But we have now learned enough, gained enough expertise to tackle terrorism in Kashmir Valley. 370 or no 370, in the last 5 years, we have neutralized as many terrorists as possible. And I can tell you today that if there is any, as Sri Padmanabhayaji was probably indicating to us that there could be some spurt in terrorism, I was there in Srinagar just 2 days before the decision was taken in the parliament. I happened to meet with our corps commander. I told him what will happen if suppose some drastic decision is taken. We are not supposed to disclose anything. So he said, sir, don't worry, whatever you want to do, you do it. How to handle it, we know. We have enough experience of last 40 years. We will deal with it. Don't worry about the situation. You go ahead and do it what is in the interest of the country and the interest of the people of this state. Terrorism, we know how to handle it. Let me tell you, even today, we are determined to neutralize the last terrorist, that fellow who puts his foot on the soil of Kashmir. He will be neutralized. We know how to tackle the overground support base. Whether it is the Hurriyat or it is Jamaat-e-Islami or the businessmen who surreptitiously fund the terror establishment apparatus there, they all will be tackled sternly through legal means. But this decision has much wider significance and ramifications. This Article 370, which we are talking about, is against the development of Jammu and Kashmir. Do you know that Jammu and Kashmir is one state into which any major investment went in middle of 1950s? In the last 65 years, no major private investment has gone in. Can you show me one district in the rest of the country? Forget about state. The reason was given by Krishna Rao ji. You can, if you go and invest there, you cannot own land. And if you take an engineer from Delhi or from Uttar Pradesh, he may be a Hindu, he may be a Muslim, whoever he may be. But he cannot have his children admission to a government school. He cannot get into admission into a government hospital. He cannot own a flat. Which industry will go? Which investment will go? Where there is no security for land, no security for lives, no basic human rights. Do you know that Jammu and Kashmir, if I talk about Hyderabad, several thousand companies in Hyderabad would be listed on Bombay Stock Exchange. Many hundreds would be listed on London Stock Exchange, New York. Nikki, in the entire Jammu and Kashmir, in last 7 decades, there's only one company listed on Bombay Stock Exchange, and that too is a government company called Jammu and Kashmir Bank. Remember, this is the extent of deprivation of the people. Padmanabhaji was right. Thousands of crores. To compensate it, you would pump in thousands of crores. Between 2004 and 16, we pumped in more than 1 lakh crores into that state. Between 2015 and 2019, we were in power. We have been in power in the last 4-5 years now. We have pumped in an additional 100,000 crores, 1 lakh crores. But it doesn't reach the people. So the deprival of development of the ordinary Kashmiris is because of this article. Number 2, it is against the political rights of ordinary Kashmiris, remember. This is one article which did not allow even the fundamental rights of our constitution, part 3 of our constitution, which talks about fundamental rights, right to live, freedom of expression, all those rights. They were not extended to Jammu and Kashmir in the first 4 years from 1950 to 1954. Those who talk about human rights and all that should remember that this very article was against the very fundamental rights of this country. It took 4 years, great effort, to extend the entire constitution to Jammu and Kashmir. Even then, entire constitution could not be extended. In 1950, when the constitution was extended to the rest of the country, only 2 articles were extended to Jammu and Kashmir, Article 1 and Article 370. It took 4 years. And in between, we made a big compromise. When in 1954, through a presidential order, we decided to extend Indian constitution only with lot of restrictions. We could extend it. Those restrictions were incorporated into Article 370. A new article was created, Article 35A. Now, Article 35A, let me tell you, where should it come in constitution? Under Article 35? Do you know it doesn't come there? It comes in the annexure. You read the constitution, there is Article 35. In fact, many people ask me, sir, you are talking about 35A. Where is 35A? Because it was inserted in an illegal manner, unconstitutional manner, surreptitiously. That's why it found its place not in the main body, but in the annexures. How much of harakiri we have done with it, remember. And when we finally decided, after a lot of pressure from the parliamentarians and all, when finally Nehru decided to extend it, it was extended, the Constitution of India was extended to the state with so many riders that it was as good as not extended. Because 3-4 major riders, you look at them, we decided that, it's so funny. In 1952, there was a meeting between Nehru and Sheikh Abdullah. There was an agreement, it is called Delhi Agreement. Sheikh Abdullah told Nehru that you are a progressive man. How can you still have this Maharaja, Jammu and Kashmir? So Nehru liked it. Nehru was a romantic person. He had great objection to Nepal having a kingdom-like arrangement. He had no objection to British Queen. But so Nehru said, yeah, it's so bad. How can you have in an independent India a Maharaja still surviving? So the Maharaja and Crown Prince, who used to be the regent in those days, Maharaja Karan Singh. So the nomenclature was changed. Maharaja was removed, and the Crown Prince, the regent, was given a new name called Sadar-e-Riyasat, equivalent to governor, but won't be appointed by Rashtrapati ji, appointed by the assembly. Fair enough, at least some nomenclature. But there was a special request by Sheikh Abdullah. You see, you remove Maharaja, but Maharaja had a Pradhan Mantri, you should not remove him. Because that Pradhan Mantri was Sheikh Abdullah. The Vidambana was from 1952 to 1967, you had 2 prime ministers in India. One prime minister was Jawaharlal Nehru until 1964, later on 2-3 people. Similarly, in Kashmir, we used to have different prime ministers. Bakshi Ghulam Muhammad se lekar alag-alag log. India had 2 prime ministers. This was 370 you are talking about. And separate constitution was allowed. The constitution of 1939 was allowed to be amended and passed again in 1957. They passed a separate constitution in their state and said, under our constitution, we will have a separate citizenship. And do you know, sir, today we removed Article 370. The biggest legal question that we were faced with was, what do you do with the Chief Justice and Governor? Do you know both of them took oath in the name of Jammu and Kashmir Constitution? And you have removed that constitution. Now, technically speaking, the governor is no longer there. The kind of harakiri, the kind of mischief that has been created in the name of Article 370. We formed a government in 2015. And Prime Minister was there at this very beginning, everybody was there. We were all so happy that we never imagined that one day BJP would be the ruling party in Jammu and Kashmir at that time. Now I can confidently say, in every future government it will be BJP only there. But those days it was a big happy moment for all of us. So Prime Minister himself came down to Jammu. That time the assembly was in Jammu. He came down. There was oath taking ceremony. Mufti Sahib became Chief Minister. One of our leaders, Dr. Nirbal Singh, became the Deputy Chief Minister. This happened at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. 4 o'clock there was a cabinet meeting. I was sitting in the guest house. 5 o'clock after the cabinet, our Deputy Chief Minister came running to me. Said, sir, we have a major problem. I said, yaar, 12 o'clock oath liye ho. 5 o'clock का problem क्या हो गया? He said, look, there is no problem as such in the government. But the problem is, for 4 o'clock cabinet meeting, when I came out, there was the official car. First time I had an official car, because I am the Deputy Chief Minister. When I was about to sit in the car, I noticed that there are 2 flags on that car. One was the Indian flag, the other was Jammu and Kashmir flag. Then I felt, how can I sit in a car with 2 flags? Because all my life I fought against these 2 flags. I told my officers that remove that flag. They said no, protocol doesn't permit, because as per the Jammu and Kashmir constitution, Kashmir flag also enjoys equal status as that of the national flag. You had 2 national flags. चलो मैंने उनको सुझाव दिया, एक अच्छा वे आउट हमने क्रिएट किया कि हमारे गाड़ी के फ्लैग को ढकने के लिए एक प्लास्टिक पाउच आता है. मैंने कहा यार, यूज दैट प्लास्टिक पाउच एंड कश्मीर फ्लैग, ओनली लेट द इंडियन फ्लैग बी विजिबल. अब क्या करें, कुछ तो करना है. दिस इज द आर्टिकल वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट. एंड दिस हैज, सर, दिस हैज डिनाइड political rights of the people. Padmanabh Bhaiya was mentioning about the Panchayat elections, block elections and all. We are doing all those elections now. Panchayat elections used to happen in the past also. In fact, Omar Abdullah Sahab one day contested me, saying that Ramadoji is saying they are holding Panchayat elections, we also held them. But they used to hold Panchayat elections, but Panchayats never had any rights. All the rights are only concentrated in the hands of MLAs and MPs, some 200 people. Why I talked about 200, I will let you know later. When we decided to implement Panchayat Raj system, we decided that 73rd, 74th amendment of our constitution to Panchayat Raj system, under which Panchayats have been granted administrative and financial powers. Money would directly come from Delhi to the Panchayats, of course through the state machinery, but the monies would go directly to the Panchayats. As a result, today Panchayat level leadership is growing. We have encouraged grassroots political leadership to grow in that state. This is what I mean by denial of political rights to people. And there was no 3-tier system there until now. For the first time, we have introduced 3-tier Panchayat system. Village Panchayat, Block Panchayat and Jilla Panchayat. And there are refugees, there are migrants. Refugees and migrants were non-citizens, non-PR status people in Jammu and Kashmir. 90% of them are scheduled castes. They went from Uttar Pradesh, they went from Bihar, they came from erstwhile Punjab, which has become a part of Pakistan in 47. Living there for 70 years, but same situation as Krishna Rao mentioned. Cannot get admission into the schools for their children. They cannot get ration cards. They can vote in the parliament election because they are citizens of India. They cannot vote in the assembly election. They cannot vote in the panchayat election because they are not citizens of Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir has a separate citizenship. Isn't it the denial of basic rights of the people? Now, I am happy Padmanabhaji mentioned about Human Rights Commission. Because the status of the state has changed, the Human Rights Commission that Jammu and Kashmir state used to have was under the constitution of J&K. Naturally, when the constitution has gone, that institution will go. It's going to be a new UT status. It will have a new setup of all the commissions. But may I ask you, we are worried about not having Human Rights Commission today. Have we ever bothered about not having Women's Commission in that state? In all these years? Have we ever raised that question? Why was there no Scheduled Caste Commission in that state? Why was there no Scheduled Tribe Commission? Are all these not the rights of those sections of the people? Because we took 370 as something fait accompli, we can't do anything, so you won't have all those things. 370 did not allow any of things to come in. In fact, for many years, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes did not have their political reservation in assembly. In Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, in all these states, you have reserved seats for MLAs, for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, not in Jammu and Kashmir. After a lot of fight, people in Jammu and Kashmir got scheduled caste reservations for 7 seats. In Jammu region, all the 7 are won by BJP, it's a different story. But I'm saying, 7 seats we got it. Scheduled tribes did not have a reservation even to this day. Do you know Jammu and Kashmir has 12% scheduled tribe population? No ST seats. Refugees, no citizenship. Isn't it violation of human rights? Should we be worried about what human rights organizations in UNHRC say, or should we worry about the human rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir today? That is why I am saying, when we did it in the interest of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And look at the human dignity aspect of it. Some women are sitting here. You know, Jammu and Kashmir under 370 had a peculiar system. A man can choose any woman from anywhere in the world to be his wife. It's a choice anybody can make. And Padmanabhaji knows it very well. Half the Hurriyat leaders have their wives either from England or from Pakistan, not even from Kashmir or US. But a woman in Kashmir is not allowed to marry anybody outside of the state. No freedom of choice. Even a Muslim outside is not to be married. She would immediately forfeit her permanent resident status. After a lot of legal battles and all that, when women fought, when legislature took it up, when country also took it up in a big way, finally the great Jammu and Kashmir government decided to give a big concession. The concession was, all right, as long as you are alive, even if you marry outside, you will be entitled to PR status, but not your siblings, not your children. आपके बच्चे होंगे वो उनको सिटीजनशिप नहीं मिलेगा. So it is against the dignity of the people. That is what I am saying. That is why we decided it should go. It should go on one hand for national integrity reasons. But remember, not every Kashmiri is anti-national. Not every Kashmiri is a separatist. He is like you and me. We did it because we wanted to give development rights, political rights, and right to dignified living to all the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Now the state has become an integral part of India. It's like any other state in the country. It's no longer a state. It has been split into two union territories have been created. Ladakhis are very happy. They are rejoicing. It has been a long pending demand for them. In Jammu and Kashmir, Jammu region is happy that they have been finally able to fully integrate with the rest of the country. There are issues in Kashmir Valley. They will be taken care of. They will be dealt with utmost sensitivity. Now here I want to tell you one thing. Today, 2 months have passed. today, I mean tomorrow, 5th of October will be exactly 2 months since the abrogation happened. There is this propaganda that, you have arrested thousands of people. Let me tell you, today there are only 200 plus leaders in preventive detention. Here there are so many IPS officers, so many people who have handled home ministry. Preventive detention is a normal law and order arrangement. As politicians, we all have faced it. It doesn't come under any human rights violation, friends. Preventive detentions in 5-star hotels, with good facilities, with TVs, books and all those things, a temporary measure to ensure law and order in the state. I'm saying it's a temporary measure. But I'm saying something maybe a little mischievously. 200 people in jail for 2 months, the entire state is peaceful. Now one may say, no, you have sent lot of army, that's why people are not daring to come out. Sir, I have seen Kashmir last 5 years. I know, for Kashmiris, the presence of army, paramilitary is nothing new. When Burhan Wani happened, we brought forces from outside the state for security purposes. We deployed them in big way. But for 1 full month, entire state was on the boil. Every day there used to be dozens and dozens of stone pelters. Stone pelting incidents, not stone pelters. But for last 2 months, very sporadic, maybe a couple of incidents where about 10-20 people. The state was largely quiet, with 200 people in jail. Now you can imagine how effective this preventive detention has been. Plus, please don't mistake me. That doesn't mean these people will be in jail forever. No. Very soon, they will have their freedom. We want normal political activity to be restored in the state, but it has to be a normal political activity. Average Kashmiri today knows, understands, and is internalizing the fact that 370 has gone for good. It's not going to come back. Whatever Mr. Owaisi may say here, whatever some people, so-called liberals may say here, this article is gone for good. We are focusing in a big way in taking the development to the doorsteps of average Kashmiris. Yes, that's why I said, preventive detention, of course, is a day-to-day, daily affair. But we had situations like emergency when people were put in jails for months together, months on, for 20 months, 22 months. So, no such situation will be there. It will be a temporary measure. Very soon, people will have full freedom to resume their political activity. Development is our priority. We will be focusing on taking development to the doorsteps of ordinary Kashmiris. We are committed to extending all the political rights to all the people of Jammu and Kashmir. We are going to give them scheduled tribe reservation seats in assembly now. It's a right, sir. It's a right which has been denied. We are going to give that reservation of scheduled tribe seats to them. All these commissions that we talked about, all those commissions will come into being now. There will be Scheduled Caste Commission, Scheduled Tribe Commission, of course Human Rights Commission, Minority Commission. There Hindus are a minority, Buddhists are a minority. They also need a commission. So all these things that are mandatory under the Constitution of India shall come into place as and when the legislature resumes its activity in that state, hopefully not very far away from now. The other issues, you please don't worry about it. What will Pakistan do? Please don't worry about it. Remember once, I mean, at that time, Padmanabhaji was in that government. That's why I'm going back to that. In 1994, India's parliament, Lok Sabha, had unanimously stated that if there is any one outstanding issue between India and Pakistan, it will be only about the status of POK. So, we were clear in 94 itself. As far as Kashmir is concerned, which we are governing, which is our own Kashmir, we will not look at it from the prism of Pakistan or any other country. The decision was taken in 94, because that's why we said, only outstanding matter about Kashmir is, how do you get back that POK? Sabka number aayega. But abhi to, that is the only outstanding issue. We will deal with it. I told you, our security forces are capable of tackling any situation. But remember, this can be, I mean, there are ways of looking at it. One can look at it as a threat. One can say it is desperation. There is an element of desperation. Nobody is standing by them, sir. Those who are overtly looking to be standing by them are privately telling, sir, majburi hai. Saudi Arabia is solidly with us. UAE is solidly with our decision. Indonesia is with us. Many countries in the world, you have seen what happened at the Security Council meeting. And you have seen what happened at Houston. Now, we may say that he has not used the word Pakistani terror or anything. Even Modi ji did not use that word. One will be politically correct, sir. They won't say in black and white. You have to read between the lines. The world is with us on the question of terror and the epicenter of terror. Everybody knows the epicenter of terror is Pakistan. So we know how to tackle. We will handle the world opinion also with utmost care. But such a big decision will have some critics. You can't expect everybody to stand up and applaud for you. There will be some critics. What to talk of the Labour Party when your own Indian parties are standing up and criticizing you? What all Pakistan has cited in the United Nations was not their opinion, it's the opinion of some of the Indian political party leaders. So don't expect that everybody would be applauding it at once, but everybody understands that India has arrived. You cannot antagonize India. They know a country with whom they have $100 billion, $200 billion business versus a country with whom they don't even have $1 billion business. Sir, business matters. We also know what matters in the world. That is why I said, you have a different set of leadership today in this country, which understands how to deal with such difficult issues. I am not saying it out of arrogance or anything. I am only reassuring you that all the concerns are valid. But remember, there is Modi. We handle it. We have the knack, we have the capacity to handle these challenges. For us, international opinion, etc., are well within our controllable limits. We have regularly been in touch with them. Many people, in fact, what Security Council had categorically said was, look, this is the internal matter of India. There is no question whether condemning or praising is a secondary thing. There is no need for any resolution also, because it is an internal matter and Security Council doesn't discuss internal matters of the countries. Security Council was so clear. Except Pakistan and China, nobody was there to stand up by that resolution for, criticizing India and all that. And no Tom, Dick and Harry can come to India in the name of investigation, friends, be clear. The Americans have, a congressional body. US Congress has created, US Commission on International Religious Freedom. We can create one in India and talk about the atrocities that happen in America. How many Sikhs have been subjected to humiliations? How many Muslims have been subjected to humiliations? So let us not be afraid of all these people. In fact, Government of India does not even give visas to these people, you remember. We don't even give visa. In fact, whenever we go to USA, they will only ask one thing: sir, please give us visa. We are ready to write whatever you want us to write. Give us visa. Let us visit that place. So don't worry, there are ways of tackling these forces. But that doesn't mean there is anything wrong going to happen or happening in Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir we are handling with utmost care, utmost sensitivity. In the last 2 months, there is no single casualty in the state because of the security forces. And you please ask the security forces officials there, how much of patience they are displaying there. There were situations, they faced situations there, but they are displaying utmost patience. So the result is today a peaceful Kashmir. We will gradually but definitely go back to the people of Kashmir and convince them about the efficacy of this decision. Already a large section of the people of Kashmir have started appreciating the fact, as many of my predecessors have mentioned, that this Article 370, if at all, it has helped anybody, only a certain set of political leaders it has helped. It became a bread and butter issue for those leaders. That is why they are making all this noise. Otherwise, average Kashmiri has not got anything out of Article 370. This realization is definitely dawning on the people of Jammu and Kashmir also. Since you mentioned about it's about the whole country, let me make one request to all of you and end my speech. If the whole country is really concerned about Article 370 and all that, it is history now. And we as a government will do the utmost to ensure the rights and developmental activity in Jammu and Kashmir reaches the people of that state. But there is one responsibility that is on the shoulders of all of us, the entire country. Sir, we in BJP, or even when Prime Minister or many of you would have heard the slogan, Kashmir Hamara Hai. एंड हमारे विजात परिषद के लोगों ने एक लाइन और जोड़ा है, कश्मीर हमारा है, जो कश्मीर हमारा है वो सारा का सारा है. It's a fact. But sir, what do we mean by that? कश्मीर हमारा है का मतलब क्या है? Are we talking about the territory? Please remember, कश्मीर हमारा है का मतलब है हर कश्मीरी भी हमारा है. It is time Kashmiris feel it. So I would urge all of you, when you plan your next vacation, it should be to Srinagar. When you plan your next pilgrimage, it should be to Vaishnav Devi or Amarnath Yatra. There are senior people here, but if your children plan any honeymoon, let it be to Srinagar, let it be to Gulmarg. The country has to embrace the people of Jammu and Kashmir, as I am again repeating. Don't think that all the people of Jammu and Kashmir are separatists or terrorists or anti-nationals. No, they are like you and me. For them, daily bread matters. Anybody can take them in any direction. You have suffered Maoism in this state. And those who have handled it can tell you, not all people are Maoists. But they were driven by certain forces. So is the situation in Kashmir. They are like you and me. It is time the whole country stands up and says, every Kashmiri is a part and parcel of my family, the family of India. Friends, that is the need of the hour. Thank you.
Thank you.